So good morning, guys. So this day was the final day of our remedial, and I had to go through enhancing, or rather reminding the students the nitty-gritties of essay writing and generally English, because they asked me what can make them excel in English, and I had to take time explain to them. So if you are a student who wants to understand some things here and there, pay attention and listen to them. Now, the first question, we were talking about the conclusion, and I was telling them what kind of statements we might have. In some cases, we have proverbs, proverbs that are applicable to the question to give a lesson, a moral lesson kinda. But in some ways, we have a general statement. So I had to make them explain to me what they have understood about the conclusion, the introduction of an essay, and body paragraphs, as well as the topic sentence and background information. Then exactly something that bothers students is the conclusion. So I had to ask them to explain to me the variety of conclusions they have seen, because whereas proverbs apply to some essays, the truth is that in all cases, we cannot have proverbs. We have cases where we must have a general statement that applies to it, or, you'll just understand as you check our discussion. So don't be bored. It will take long, but it's worth it. And guys, I'm in a celebratory mode because I've achieved my mission, my goal. The parents are so happy, the students are so happy. So welcome and listen to our discussion. Self-sentencing, you must prove beyond any reasonable doubt that indeed, if you talk about maybe having stolen maize, it is only once they did it, and indeed in the house there was totally nothing, and what they picked was one maize and not a bag of maize, suggesting that they were not going to sell but just to maybe roast it and eat. And also suggest that in another setting somewhere, someone stole maybe just one chicken and they realized that he did not have totally what to use, and that is why you have to let this one go. So as a judge, when you are handling that background information, make sure that you are not accusing one on maybe one situation. Make sure that you are convincing us that indeed this person did this, or if you are telling us there is bad governance, which is corruption, one person only cannot prove that the entire Maracas is corrupt. We have to get Mosi having done this and this and that. Jordan done this and that and that. Then maybe another person, Ramdai, did this and that. Once you give us 3 evidence, you are now good to go. You can now tell us that indeed I've proven that Maracas is corrupt. If it is focusing on one character, maybe you're talking about Nicole as a voice of hope. Now you've talked about hope in relation to pursuit of the app. Then you have to make sure that you have really proved that she was defending this app. Maybe if it is the launching part where Mosi has said, I'm not launching, but she says, okay, you are telling me to write a letter, I'm only going to do what's right. And then, of course, she's hanging on hope. Then we go again to another situation. Mosi comes to the office, tells her you can receive some, you can quote the psalm, but she goes ahead and tells him, I don't think that as a leader you should be doing this. Do you want me to expose you? And even when he leaves and says, I'm Mosi or Tunya, the smoke that thunders, you must go and delete that. She says that I don't have any power over the app. Now get the third again. Where else do they convince her to do anything to the app and she rejects? So at least 3 aspects, where it is maybe Nareen now or the students or something. So whether it's one character you're handling with a specific vice or virtue, make sure that you have at least 3 minimum different evidence, so that you're not only talking about one and one and one. You remember the question you just handled, whereby I've been adding you, telling you that if you say Mosi indeed is an enemy, whichever way, you cannot convince us that when he just says Ramdai is corrupt and Ramdai has engaged in tenders which involve friends, that one only, that accusation alone is enough. You have now to go to a place whereby we see him again telling them, you, Ted and Seima, you are invited, or rather you are elected as, infested hoodlums, and now today you have all these cars. Can you explain your source of income? He did not just do in their absence only, he has done that in their presence. And then now talk about the way he, for example, plans to attack them using the Red Eagles. There is a mistake I've done that. It's Red Eagles and what? The other group is known as? The group that Bembe owns. Yeah, so you correct that. There's an essay. Instead of that, I've written Black Swan Gang. When I finished, I realized it's not that, because Black Swan Gang, it belongs to. Yeah, so you can correct that one in that essay on lightly talking about serious effects under violence, I think. Yeah, so you can see that one is 3. Mosi has practiced that 3 times, in their face, in their absence, and also just in a meeting. So just using one evidence as a blanket is not enough. Then, still under that background information, always make an effort of being specific. Don't only say that, let's say, I don't know which essay. There was an essay whereby we were not trying to be, like you are talking about it, but you are not bringing the exact points. Like you just say that, for example, you just say that the students are scared about the app. The students are scared about the app, but Nicole insists to support it. That's not, you will be, it's like you have not internalized the text. So the essay always wants you to prove that you have internalized the text by saying that Nicole, the students Alvita and Montano, after the previous year's ultimatum by Mayor, they come to Nicole's office and share that they are afraid. If the teacher continues to pursue the app, she might be in danger, she might even be transferred. But then she tells them, the app has been mentioned behind the Samaritan app, that which saved a beaten individual. So in the same way, our app is just saving the citizens who have been beaten by the leadership and left to suffer. So let us hope, and let us only hold on hope to save the situation. Therefore, instead of giving up, we must now pursue the app so much. When you say, for example, Nareen tries to stop Nicole from pursuing the app, just like that, without now telling us what exactly she tells her. Like Nareen tells her that it seems you are diverting your attention from teaching to political goals, and you are serving, because I know you. In fact, she tells Nicole, I know you for being what? Ambitious. And it's possible you are now fighting the leaders. And it's not very good for you as a young person. And I will not let you do that, because you are one of my best teachers. And I'll hold you and throw you by any open space. Now, Nicole tells her, you don't just say Nicole persists. You have to say that Nicole reminds the teacher that an elephant that what? Trumps the rat is not a hero. And I'll not subdue to slavery. Even if you're talking about historical moments where nothing has ever happened, I believe that through the app, if I pursue it, it's going to create that change. So you're saying that from just that general aspect to specific. You must try all the time to be specific. Now tell me about the conclusive sentence for each paragraph. What have you learned about it?
It depends on the context.
Mm-hmm.
It can be related to the paragraph, or it can be used as a lesson to.
I'm talking about the conclusive sentence for paragraph, not the conclusive paragraph. Within each paragraph, the 4 body paragraphs. Like that sentence we are saying, surely or indeed, or as such. What did you learn about that? Once you have finished your paragraph, for example, on that hope, and you are ending it, what did we say about that final sentence? Because I applied the pie when I was telling you about pointing in the topic sentence. You have illustrated in 3 ways. Now you are explaining.
Show the effect of what you have written.
Yeah?
Show the effect.
Not really to show the effect, but prove. It's like a proof. I don't know, like let's say when you are doing a speech, every time you finish that a point, let's say you have told people it's good to wake up early. When you wake up early, you start your day in time and you can plan everything. So you are saying, indeed, time management is critical in your life. You fail to master that, you fail to master everything about yourself. So that final sentence for each paragraph is just like you're trying to bring everything together. So that if you are talking about, let's say, how Lara has used sarcasm to bring out Mosi as a corrupt person, and the rest of the Maracas municipality, like Jaden when he says under the radar, and Ramdai when he says whatever he says. So you are saying that indeed, through humor and sarcasm, we learn so much about Ramdai, Mosi, and Jaden as people who are indulging much in the crime than what the citizens require. Because you're just trying to emphasize what you've discussed in the entire, yeah. Now let's talk about the conclusive paragraph now, what you are saying. You can now share what you are saying about the conclusive paragraph.
It can be used to address the specifics like leaders, or it can be a general, and then you're supposed to start with in conclusion, conclusively, or in a nutshell,
Or overall.
or one can use a proverb related to the issue.
When do we easily use a proverb and when do we use general statements? Maybe when do you easily find that I can use a proverb? From the experience because you've written almost, I don't know whether there are 20. Did you reach 20 essays? Yeah, around there. So what have you discovered? Like, in which case do you find it easy to use a proverb? And in which case do you just use a statement? And in which case do you use maybe specific on character? A proverb applies easily to a question that is on moral. Moralistic questions will easily make you to understand that. And such questions will be more on a vice or a virtue, with a vice that has a consequence or a choice that has a reward. Those ones can easily bring you the proverb. However, when you're dealing with questions whereby you are on interpretation, matters to do interpretation, like how an author has built ideas, or maybe how an author has exposed a certain character or a certain behavior in the community. That one now requires you to give either a general statement or maybe a kind of blanket move that will just lead us into reasoning. Because we are critical thinkers, we are creative thinkers. So for example, that question on light moments and what have you, it turns back to the reader. We have those which turn back to the society at large, so that we are warned against and we just learn that this is around us. Then we have impression, those which give a general impression. So you have to also give a statement that is more of an impression. So once you learn that, I think it can be easy for you to differentiate one from the other, one question from the other. And then these questions on themes, they can only help you to interpret the text, but most questions must have two sides. But just discussing a theme, those ones were maybe meant to help students revise on specific themes. But most questions must give the two-sided cause, effect, virtue, reward, vice, punishment, maybe a relationship and how it ended, forgiveness from maybe falling out, a development out of effort, such. Then of course, even satire, for that who is dealing with fathers of nation, be aware that that book is also has political satire. Because at the moments when Bangora is just making fun like that, he's proving how in dysfunctional the leaders are. The moment whereby we are seeing the clearing of the pathways, it's just being taken for granted, but a serious person will note that this is a moment of economic downfall. When we look at what happens to Kimani, you might see at a perspective of a lecturer and an MP, but then it tries to communicate injustices within our communities. You see what Melusi encounters with Boma, you realize that revenge is used as a tool and destruction is used as a tool in power politics by the leaders. You see what happens at Chineke, you realize that politicians hate critics. Any moment they realize you are a radical person, they'll have to frustrate you. But then still again, as you saw the other question, regardless of that frustration, there may be a way out. So I think having learned all those lessons, if you try so much to apply them, it won't be hard for you to attend to essays. And then you also try to practice on creative writing. I don't know whoever took that book, because actually I just sent thinking that it will have helped you to go through the several creative writing examples. There were so many there, so that it will help you to, because that is one of the questions that is the easiest. Once you score highly in creative writing, then the rest is easy. But if you have a bank of idiomatic expressions that you use correctly, at least a proverb or one there, the articulate language, because they always look for linguistic power. If you are able to convince somebody, well, if it is creative, let it describe also, because most students, instead of making us see, they want us to follow and hear. Like someone will say, I woke up in the morning, I went, I don't know where. It's like they are giving a nursery rhyme. So it becomes very boring to someone already. They are just seeing a flow of common story. And then people are avoiding, I don't know why students avoid mature stories, whereby you imagine yourself in a position of even a president or a political aspirant or a doctor already in a situation, a lawyer in a contradictory situation, because creative writing scores when you have very mature stories, and then the twist in the stories. We don't only have to see Afro-cinema continuous shortly, because like you automatically know what is going to happen. We should see a twist, because something has happened, you've been, if there is a kidnap, should it automatically make you end up suffering, or there should be something happening, It should be even a situation where you've been kidnapped, but in the end of the process, the main kidnapper maybe was your brother, and they mistook you or something, So those twists, most students don't come up with them. Then using dialogue, students use dialogue for, how are you? I'm fine. Are you going to sleep? Yes. But dialogues are supposed to bring a conflict. Either bring a conflict or inform us about something which is quite surprising, or break the tension. But if you just bring a conversation that is normal, that one does not add anything, any value to your work. Then vocabulary, because there is a mature vocabulary for high school student in comparison to primary. Like if you use Jack and Jill English, automatically your rating will be low. You have to, like if it is, you used strange at some point, we should see bizarre, we should see weird. If you used friend, you must use maybe comrade, you must use, those synonyms, you must have a bank of synonyms for specific words which you commonly use in your work, so that we don't see you repeating. Then long sentences. Long sentences. As far as we want you to have a mixture of sentences whereby you have complex, compound, complex, compound, do not write very long sentences. The problem is that there is ambiguity in most of the long sentences. So it's always safe you have simple sentences and you have the complex, few complex, compound. Once you realize you have used and twice in a sentence, be very careful, because there is a possibility whoever will read may not understand what you are saying. Then what else? Spellings. Always check your work after you've written. Make sure your spellings are proper. I've seen you have a problem with some F's. You write like T. Check that. Punctuation. Make sure your punctuation is also mixed, because you've learned a variety. You've learned colon, you've learned brackets. Why is it that you don't use them? Yet it's supposed to be there for extra explanation, for options, for, semicolon, colon. They are under merit tick, because they are part of the punctuation students rarely use. A student will use a colon correctly, semicolon, and bracket in a composition will have an upper hand, because they consider automatically this one must have really interacted with a lot of writings. Then just try to read examples around, and if you realize you are very weak, if you master like 3 specific compositions, one that depicts good, another bad, another whatever, and you go write it, even if you lose marks on what we call relevance, it will only be 4 marks that will be deducted. The rest, they'll mark on linguistic competence, because compositions are meant to teach students to become competent in their communication. So once you are able to be competent in how you are communicating whatever you are passing, and you are creative enough, you are mature in your story, you will automatically get even 14 and above, because we have seen even people from Garissa, they score highly because they have just had to drill themselves into maybe 3 compositions, then they come write that. As long as you are not now lifting the characters from the current books or using that as it is, because we have also seen students who just carry like the one of the short stories from Kiswahili, and then they bring it and write it in English. So it kills their power to actually express beyond their thought. Then of course it shouldn't be bedroom scenes, because some students go to discuss matters of erotic love, which is not expected, and then not justifying a vice. You should not justify that I used to be a thief, maybe I conducted burglary in a city, I could have had guns, most of my friends died, however I ended up being rich. That one is justifying vice, which is not right. Because if you pick a character who has conducted a vice, before they become better, they must go through punishment, so that at the end of the day they are saved maybe in the situation. So unless you have questions, I think we have come to our end. I'm waiting for your viewers.
How do you
How do you?
Out of this, the question is out of easy. How do you revise English?
Away from essays.
Yeah.
Now the rest, especially now you are still Form 3, but you are almost Form 4. The way to revise English is, because like there is paper 1, there is paper 2, there is paper 3. Now I always advise students that, for example, a week has 6 days. Make sure that the sections in English, unfortunately English has so many sections, but you can decide to revise paper-wise. Another option is that you decide maybe you have writing, and writing covers paper 1 and 3. You have writing, maybe you can allocate 2 days to writing, whereby one day you are doing essays, another day you are doing the compositions, functional writing. Because functional writing, Unfortunately, they have moved a lot of marks to language. Currently, you can see that in most of the papers it's between 8 and 10. So they are telling you to write an application letter, then you are writing it plainly, but there is a student who has used some idiomatic expressions. They have thrown there one proverb that is very relevant towards what they are writing, and they have used a weighty vocabulary. Like they are not just writing that I saw this in a newspaper. You know, there is a way they are writing, maybe picking some mature vocabulary in how they are writing. So the language mark matters a lot. Most students score format, of course, because you know what a letter is, a memo is, a speech is. But then, when it comes to linguistic mark, they go down because they have been making an assumption that when I'm doing formal writing, I don't have to flower my language. Unfortunately, you have to, because it has come to that. So when you practice a lot, of course, you try, like there's a year they set a persuasive letter. Now, when you look at the language of persuasion, the language of persuasion is there. And you are describing, it was persuasive at the same time describing the beauty of your school. And at the same time, as you are writing this letter, you cannot convince me to come to your school just because the food is maybe delicious, the niceties in the dining hall. No. We want to see a student who actually understands that a school becomes better because of a firm leader, maybe in relation to resources, let's say the library that is resourceful, the kind of teachers who are devoted, the students who are disciplined. So there are students who thought that in this one I just say, yeah, our school, you can come, the dining hall is very beautiful, we really participate in music, we are always number one. That student will not score a lot of marks because at the end of the day, the fact of performance or a school being excellent, what is the reality on the ground? Then there is a year they set, I think it was a letter of application. No, it's a letter of request, kind of. Like students were supposed to make a request to the principal because there is a performance somewhere and they would wish to go. So when you are convincing a principal to go out as student fraternity, then you say that it will give us room to socialize. Against another one who says, against all odds, watching a play is one of the enterprising venture that allows students to recall the synopsis of the play and the characters. It actualizes what is done in the text to the stage. You are seeing that difference of the two students. Then also there should be a reward for this principle. The fact that we are going to, once we come back in the next elite or in the next mock exam, we are going to perform excellently. Currently we have a miniscope of this, but we are planning to have this. So you have to show that indeed you are people who are worth being allowed to go. Knowing also other details in relation to what happens in a venture like that. So most times they are testing on the art. Like if it's a request, they want to see you requesting. If it's a speech you are giving, like there's a year again they tested on a speech on leadership. Yeah, was it 2016 or somewhere there? They tell you are going for a speech presentation to talk about leadership. So write a speech in relation to that. So you must be somebody who knows poor leadership and proper leadership. And this has been covered. Unfortunately, these things they said are covered in our books. Book 1 has leadership. It has a comprehension on leadership and what is required when you are a leader. So unfortunately, students don't pay attention to those comprehensions. But some of those things that are just in our texts, if you sometimes get back, if you get some time and read through, even there is one on corruption that has been covered again in those texts. There is one that has covered aspect to do with the women and safety. There is one that has talked about inheritance of property, and it was tested. Imagine. So they pick stuff from our books, which means if you practice writing continuously, that is paper 1. And I think you have that book now, paper 1. You go through the different years, try to practice writing. And as long as you know focus, the format, the body is always again in that, because you just see those sections, but they need you to expound. When they say you have to maybe plant trees, even minutes, like they tested that last year. Students think minutes, you just say that so and so proposed, another one, I don't know what. It is supposed to be given a flesh. That is why you have now to build an aspect of why should you think of planting indigenous trees, for example. So you have to argue out. You say that maybe Kenya is turning it into a hyacinth because currently many people are cutting down trees, and this has seen us maybe suffer the fate of drought. When members discuss at large, they came to a conclusion that it's better they put up a tree nursery on indigenous trees. And then you have to convince us why indigenous trees, not the exotic. So that person who has knowledge about this and is expounding scores higher than the one who just says, a member proposed, the rest of the group, I don't know, agreed unanimously. You find students just writing two sentences, and then they are imagining that it will be scoring. So that's trying to actually mind the specific functional writing, expounding on linguistic competence, and minding the language, because we have formal writings, informal. We have those which are requesting you to do the request, do the inquiry. That language must actually stand out. The idiomatic expressions must actually come out, even 2, 3. If a proverb is relevant to it, then you have also to pause it. Then apart from now paper 1, question 1, question 2, I normally say it's about the student. If you are not competent in the language, you will always give the wrong answers. But if you practice also on more papers, like the book you have has from which year up to the last year, if you practice often, you may tend to know what is expected, because it's much about the speech works, the order of words, and where you find a specific and the most appropriate. And then it goes with register. You learn that in Form 3. So if you know the register of the court, you have an advantage if they bring a close test related to the court. They bring now that to do with communication, and you are good in aspects to do with communication and its value, you will easily find room to score. They bring something to do with maybe games, you may have an advantage. They bring something to do with politics. So they normally vary year to year. Then comprehension, I don't know why students are not scoring, but I just feel like students think it is lifting, yet currently they have shifted from just lifting to reasoning, phrasing again some of the sentences. Some questions are into literature, while others are in linguistics. So you have those questions you are just lifting, telling a statistics, opinion, where you have to start with yes or not, then account for it using the comprehension. Then some students try to move away from the comprehension when we still want you to use the comprehension. However much you are thinking, you still have to go back to the comprehension. Meanings of words, of course, it's synonyms or an explanation that will not move away from the word class. Then revision of question 3, because I find oral skills, the question 3, very easy. They are just testing the stress. That is why I was asking you whether you've mastered the rules, and especially they set on exception words. Words like challenge, unlike others which have double consonant, but they have their stress coming on the second syllable. Yeah, words like what? Those exception words, they are the most tasted every year. Success. Colleague. So those exception words, because we have rules already, but the exception words are tested every year because they know students will be mixed up with that rule of verb, noun. Then you go to sentence stress is the easiest, because actually when you just read the sentence, you say that specific. It is only this that will maybe do, or it is only the verb, or you're focusing on that. Then we have intonation, the easiest. Unfortunately, Africans think when you are shouting, you have to raise your voice. But the whites, it's the opposite. When you are annoyed, you don't have to shout. So that is the only rule I see students messing up with. But the others, they try statements, and when you are dealing with yes, no, they normally get it right. Then you go to homophones. Homophones, we have specific words. They'll go for words that they know, maybe like wa. They go for words. Those words they know, you may not easily go for. Yeah, boys. Those they have tested. If you look through that book, you will see that they have repeated certain words year after year because they know people don't get it right. They don't go for the words that you will easily expect them to say. So the homophones, you just try to, because there are about 1,000. If you look in that book, I think you've between 600 and 1,000. So if you have a consistency of looking at them and trying them out, then you will easily master. Then going to this other one is minimal pairs. Minimal pairs. You revise it at some point. Then apart from that, which one? Silent letters. Either you are underlining or writing it. Now the problem students do is they copy that sound, then they place the hash. Now it is from the letter to sound. Or they have told them underline and they mark it aside. Even on that intonation, you find they have told them to identify and they are writing the arrow when it's supposed to be rising, falling. Because most times they insist on rising, falling, unless they say using an arrow. Then now coming to etiquette. We have so many etiquettes from Form 1. From telephone to introducing your family to friend, or introduction before dignitary. Then we come to Form 2, where we have telephone etiquette, which is tested a lot. Then apart from telephone etiquette, Form 3, that is on grooming. Though grooming, they don't test it as such. They'll only ask maybe how you'll dress when you're going for an interview or general interview. Then in Form 3, that's where we have discussion, though it's also in Form 2. Discussion, interview, preparation for a speech. Debate. Then now Form 4, they bring the interruptive aspects of polite interruption and agreement or disagreement and negotiation skills. So you have to know before, during, all those things, before speech, during speech. But now students in paper 1, why they fail, they don't give reasons. Yet paper 1, they have tightened the marking scheme. If you say I'll dress decently, that is not enough. Why? Maybe to look presentable. I'll rehearse before the mock audience or a mirror. Why? Maybe to master the content. So most students just give the one part of the question and fail to give the other. If you are talking about discussion, the fact that you'll start by picking a leader, why? If you'll ensure that you have turn taking, why? So each of the things must be accompanied with a reason. Then sometimes they insist on the use of the mode auxiliary. You find a student, the question is saying, what would you do? And they are just saying, rehearse before the mirror, instead of I would. So that part, I would do this, I would do this. So, and you see, like if you have revision books, you have an advantage. You keep going through the question. That is the revision process, because as long as you have learned in class, now the process that is left is you interacting with several years, and you can go topical, or as I've said, you just go different year, different questions as you try out. Then we have this one about the aspect of politeness, and most times students have been using adverbs, like you say, not adverbs, adjectives. he interrupted rudely. Maybe he spoke impolitely. However, we are not looking at the person. We are looking at the communication. So you cannot say he is rude, he is impolite, he is whatever. It should be the other way, the one I've been saying. He interrupted rudely during conversation. He spoke politely to the caller. He listened attentively or empathetically. Instead of saying he's rude, he's ignoring. Some use not, which is not expected. Like he did not pay attention. You should say he was inattentive during the conversation. He was dismissive during the negotiation. Then negotiation has specific aspects. I think for Form 3 you'll be learning that in Form 4 to deal with the process of negotiation and the steps that are expected. The other question is filling the gap. That one, it's again, you read the former and the latter so that you understand what am I supposed to fill here. Like, is that what they tested last year or which year? Like where students are given, this is a conversation between you and a teacher. You've gone to maybe talk to them and then you have to fill the gap. Most students fail because they read only the first part. They don't read the next part before you fill the gap. And if it's 2 marks, be sure that the demand needs you to find 2 specific aspects. Now, in most times when you are conversing with people, like even if you are maybe interrupting, do we really say, sorry, may I interrupt you? We only pick one. We say, may I interrupt you? But now, when we are answering questions, sorry is already a mark. Then may I interrupt you another? Excuse me, could you close the window? Most times we just say, could you close that window? So that part of excuse me is lost. Then also on checking on response to the principal, communication to someone in church, a leader in church, communication to a mayor. I hope you know those aspects, how to address the president. They are normally asked how you will address his lordship, mayorship, and all that. I think that is majorly paper 1. So paper 1, you decide if you are comfortable with doing the entire paper. If there is a teacher who helps you, then you do a paper you take. Or you go writing. You decide maybe this week I'll deal with letters, or 2 weeks deal with letters, because letters are the highest number. Letters are about 10. Yeah, apology, application, friendly. Then we have invitation, we have request, we have inquiry, we have when you are recommending for somebody, we have letter to editor, which is very rare currently, but they are normally there. Then which are, we have 2 more. I've reached 8. We have 2 more. But then in each letter, try to find out, apart from just a letter, what else is being tested, because these days are not just testing flatly a letter. There is something else. When it's a speech, you have to be very careful, because most times, I don't know why students don't score a speech, but once you read through rhetoric aspects, how to make a speech the best, and practice on it, and listen to the popular speakers, you will find out how to go about it. Then now when you come to paper 2, of course, interact with the text. You are doing Fathers of Nation. Interact with it until you can easily tell someone, this one is coming from chapter 5. This one is from chapter 8. This one is from chapter 1. So once you have mastered the text like that, even if they bring an excerpt when you are sleeping and someone just reads, you will answer. You will know exactly this happened at this point. And you will know that the characters involved are this, and this was the problem, and this was the... And most of the excerpts which are tested must be somewhere. They'll allow you to give a cause, effect, a venue, and the discussion surrounding that, and then what reactions or actions, especially for the play. But when it comes to the novel, most times it's about a venue they were, the reaction, action, what had been maybe done earlier, and then what will be done later. Then, of course, styles and themes. As I told you, don't pick styles you cannot account for. You cannot get the immediate illustration. You must see that illustration, and a simile can be seen, a metaphor, an idiom, onomatopoeia. If there is vivid description for the novel, you can see it. You can actually see that here Kimani has been vividly described, or maybe Melusi's how he was appearing, or Tahir. Yeah. Then for you, remember sometimes those things are hidden on the yeah. So you have to pay attention also to that, because most students forget about that. So some of the styles may be hidden in that. And then also, when you're dealing with character traits and you're dealing with Samaritan, some are hidden in punctuations. Like for you to know whether somebody is hot-tempered, you must sometimes look, did this character, as the author finished with an exclamation? And is the illustration telling us he was walking around and banging the table? That one tells us he was hot-tempered or violent, maybe, depending on Bembe or whatever. So that you don't only bang on the other parts and forget that. Sarcastic also, you must be very careful on the critical analysis to check on whether someone is sarcastic, humorous, you know. For fathers, it's easy because you'll just simply see maybe what Tad is saying, what Longway, though also fathers has a lot of conversations, especially in the part of Kimani and Tad, Melusi and Tad, also Abiola and Tad, a lot of conversations, and even the presidents, the breaking of direct address and those dialogues happening. Then for themes also, and especially if they say dominant theme, look for dominant, and it's only one, it can never be two. If a theme is dominant, it must appear across. Like if there is role of media, we must see clearly that that is what is running from the beginning of the excerpt to the end. But if only people quarrel at the end, then you pick that as the major conflict, you will be lost. But if they have asked for general themes, go about, look for whatever you see. As I told you, change does not happen on emotions, because emotions are just semi-permanent. Change should be something we can see clearly. Like when Abiola is referring to change as an aspect that the path Alpha will bring, the fact that previously people used to think that Africa was a good nation, now that it's full of this. Even if someone presently, there is this, and many, like when they tested last year, students were struggling to explain the theme of change, but there were so many illustrations. So in some questions, they might tell you just to explain that theme, and if marks are 2, it means you have to get 2 illustrations. Then see whether the question is asking you to comment. If it's comment, get the style, illustrate, explain what role it's playing. Then automatically we have tone, mood, or attitude, which must somehow, if it doesn't appear in question 1, it appears in question 2 or 3. And now that last year they avoided, they only brought that in poetry. Yeah, they brought that in poetry. You might be in for it, because 2023, they brought thrice. Question 1 had tone, question 2 had attitude, question 3 had mood. So prepare for that, because there is no year they avoid irony and tone. Somehow they'll just have to bring, either you explain irony in a situation, or tone, question 1, attitude, question 2, mood. So if you hate that, look for it, because 9 marks. It's very hard to lose 9 marks. So even the text you are doing, like fathers for you and Samaritan for you, paper 2. Try so much to understand the different tones of characters, attitude towards some things in the text. Like Moses' attitude towards Nicole, Nicole's attitude towards the leaders, attitude of Moses towards the app, attitude of Alvita towards change, towards future, that optimistic, pessimistic, and all that. So try to really understand whether someone is contemptuous, hateful, spiteful, loving, supportive, accommodative. Then you get to the tone which is maybe ironical, sarcastic, dismissive, nostalgic. So get to find that mood, whether it's a sad, stroke somber, or melancholic, happy, stroke joyous, stroke merry mood, calm, relaxed, confused or tensed or anxious, mysterious, serious mood. Get all that difference. Then when you get to question 3, you are here, unless things change, poetry must come. So the poetry requires a lot of revision. You have the book, try to go through those poems a lot. And for poems, of course, we normally want the meaning. Every year they'll test what is the poem about. And you have to check on the marks. The more marks, the more task you have. You have to internalize maybe line by line and paraphrase it. Because last year, those who paraphrased simply that poem on Dutch, like you just say that death is something that we cannot avoid, and when it comes, we cannot even run away or escape. And sometimes when it comes, people mourn but they forget, and life continues, Somebody scores marks than that one who is struggling to give a theme, and you are not so sure about the theme. And also a general answer like the poem is about death does not score. Because you cannot simply test a poem and then a student just says about death or love. Like the year they tested love, and that poem is in book 3. They said it is about unattainable love and how it can trick us, you see. So instead of that, why can't you paraphrase those lines and try to check through and write in your own words what you think about that poem? Yeah. Then when they are testing poetry, again, tone, mood, attitude must be tested. The character traits of the persona must be tested in one way or the other. Then the events in the poem, because they consider it again as a comprehensive aspect, so they'll tell you maybe when this happens, what does it mean? So that you are trying to understand in relation to what the poet is saying and the situation on the ground in our lives. They might also pick some phrases and say you explain, or words. Then what it depicts about life, it's a common thing they'll ask. Whether they'll say life is maybe always transitioning, or whether life is about diverse aspect, Then if they test a narrative, be sure classification must be there. I don't know why they tested 2023 a narrative which is a trickster, and students were so confused. Some coming up to tell us fable tale, and we don't have any classification currently allowing us to say it's a fable tale. It's either trickster, it should be maybe explanatory tale, it should be legendary tale, it should be dilemma narrative. Then which else have I not mentioned? The monster or ogre narrative. Is there something I've not mentioned? I think they're just those. And of course, evidence is very clear. Once there is an ogre or a creature that is transforming and consuming on all that, it's obviously an ogre narrative, and the explanation will just be the same. If it's a myth, students mix mythical tale and legendary tale. Mythical tale must be from the origin. Legendary is something happening later. You bring a mountain, of course there was earth already before the mountain, maybe. But when you are bringing life from the beginning, that is a mythical tale. If circumcision is coming, that one is something that is happening later. Then legendary most times must have heroes who are outstanding. The heroes must be outstanding. Then they ask on the question on features of narrative. Now, before you come to these common ones, like there is a song and whatever, start with checking whether the narrative has an opening formula, closing formula, it has personification, it has fantasy. So even before you finish that, don't go to song before, because sometimes we raise controversy surrounding these others. They can be found elsewhere, but for narratives, those first ones, start with those. Once they are there and you have handled, now you can check whether you can add the rest. Then, of course, economic or social or political aspects. Sometimes they say socio-economic. That one you must pick something that is covering both social and economic and illustrate clearly from the narrative. Then sometimes, let's say they are testing on a lesson. It must be universal. You cannot say you should. It should be we should. And then it should be positive, because a lesson cannot be we should not. And then with an illustration. These days, without illustration, you don't score. If we should be obeying the elderly, then you have to illustrate that in the story someone failed to obey and they suffered. Then at the same time, narrative, what else comes? Yeah, I think generally that. Then meanings of words sometimes are brought, and relations between characters or such. Now grammar is only 15 marks plus currently sometimes 16. One in comprehension, one in question 3. So that one, again, the easiest way is to revise using past papers. Whether they are mocks or former KCSE, if you check in paper 2, if I think they bought for you, you will see a lot of questions. Go through them. But the trend is that we have questions that are focused towards preposition. Most times they don't miss. If we miss prepositions, we'll find like twice. But when they bring, either you finish correctly or you give one word or you explain. Then we have ambiguity, where you are disambiguate and write correctly or explain the two sentences, the meaning that is coming out from one sentence. Like, I love my mother than my father. Visiting friends can be boring. We left the field sweating profusely, So explaining. So if you go through several questions, then even if you don't have someone to mark, you go to answers and check. With time, something comes to your mind. This is what happens. Then passive, active, reported, and direct speech. Then you come to word formation, very common. Whether it's adjective, adverb, noun, word formation is very common. But you have to read the sentence to understand whether they want a negative form or positive. An addition or something. It will just tell you whether you have to add full or less, an or this, depending on all that. So you have to familiarize also with word formation. Then these other sentences fall under substitution, inversion, sometimes correlatives, or general conjunctions when they say end with. And we have a common one, like a not, so what, or not for. They have specific tasting they go for, because they know those ones will obviously confuse. Then we have adjectives commonly tested. So you also work through questions. I think the entire thing of paper 2 is using questions to revise, even for comprehension. If you have a book revision, go through several comprehension, try out, then look at the answers. For paper 3, I think I've already told you. So just make a habit of a personal timetable for particularly English, and then decide. If Monday I've done maybe some few grammar questions, maybe Tuesday I'll do just a writing. Maybe I'll skip one day. Thursday I do something to do with an essay. I skip one day maybe. On Saturday I have to deal with a poem. So once you do that and consistently you're doing it, automatically you will have to get it right. Because the languages are about practice. When you don't practice, you may believe you know, only to find that you can't score anymore. Yeah. So you can look at this. Let me go back to Remember I told you here, that aspect of delaying on bearing a child helped her to separate so easily. Because if she had a child, it would have been so difficult for her to walk in the night and then go on with. So the modernity of even delaying to have a child before they really have a proper settlement. It's Mila or Mula. You should have considered, yeah. How did she evade this? An end of our essay, and of course we had to pause for a photo. You will see it up there. And the students were hilarious. They were so appreciative. I just hope that the Form 4 student will score highly in English. And I also hope that the Form 3s will now have an easy time in English all the time. Only if they continue to practice, of course. And the parents are so excited. They are saying another time we'll have the same moment. Now, any other person in Kenya who expects maybe to engage me in helping, I can be free to do so. Only what matters is how far you are, because this parent had to consider paying for me the fare, and I had a place I was commuting from my sister's place, so every day he could pay for the fare from my sister's place to their home, and it was a nice moment, guys. Then they paid me money in relation to the 6 days, and of course I was handling 3 students. I didn't want to overcharge them because sometimes you just have to do community work, but at the same time you are earning something. I can't lie, the pay was not bad, and I think it's a good move, and I really appreciate such parents. I know many of you are watching. If you're interested, you can link with me. I also have a lot of books, including paper 1 revision book, paper 2, which has KCSE, former KCSEs from 1998 up to today with answers, from comprehension to narratives to poems to, grammar. And the book also has some sample papers which now engage the current books, excerpts from the Samaritan and excerpts from Fathers of Nations, and new narratives and poems that would possibly come in an exam, or even if they are not the exact ones, questions will be almost similar. So the experience is very enhancing. Yeah, stay safe. Subscribe to the channel, share my videos, and like them. I really appreciate you as the audience. You are a world to me, and you mean a lot, because without you, I wouldn't have the support I require. So let's end this with another dance. Bye-bye.